I wanted to talk about the importance of backing up our work as photographers and videographers. What things should we be doing? What is a good workflow? What's everything that we should be doing to making sure that when we shoot any type of job, whether it's photography or video, that we are backing up our files, we are keeping them securely, and making sure that we don't have any issues moving forward, where we lose files, where a client comes back to us in a few weeks or a few years even and says, I'd like to get copies of my files, and we can't open them because our files are corrupt. It's all that sort of thing. And I think this is quite important for photographers because it's very easy to not do the right things and therefore lose a lot of important work. So my first question really is, how long should we as photographers be keeping a client's files? Do you think, how long is a reasonable time limit for a customer to come back and say, I'd like to, do you still have my photos? And we are in that time frame where we say yes, or we say no, we no longer keep them.
First of all, can I just say thanks for having me at the bar?
No
It's
worries.
nice that we get a chance to have a catch up like this and
Yeah,
just sit down, have a chat, shoot the breeze, and have a drink, right? And we
yeah,
are talking about things that are, very important for people's business. But ultimately, this has got to be a sort of a conversation that we can have with everybody because it's so important, really, to kind of look at exactly what you're asking. Really, I think part of it is looking at how long, how much storage you can have, and different types of photography would generally require different lengths of time, in my opinion. So,
okay.
for instance, if you're photographing somebody's wedding, I would say my personal opinion is to keep those photographs as long as possible because I'll give you an example. My dad and I were talking the other day. He's 85. He's 85 just a couple of days ago, actually,
Mhm.
and still in really good
Wow.
health. I
Yeah,
know,
big
right?
age, great
Yes,
age.
yes, still in really good health. And we were talking about wedding albums, and I was saying how really wedding albums are the only kind of medium that doesn't age, because years ago we would have given somebody a floppy disk, and then perhaps maybe would have given someone a CD,
Yeah.
maybe a DVD.
Mm.
So if you want to keep your wedding pictures for as long as possible digitally, you're going to need a lot of storage to start off with. Now, you client images should be kept for a minimum, I would say, of 7 years. And then you can look to put the onus back onto the client and sort of say to them, look, we've kept your images for 7 years. Would you like to, we're going to archive them. Would you like to retain a copy of that? Do you still have the copy that we've given you? Um, and just ensuring that those pictures are kept. It also gives a good opportunity to ask wedding clients if they are if they're interested in buying a wedding album,
Mm.
because, like I said,
Well,
my
they are timeless, aren't they? I mean,
yeah,
they
I mean
they
my
they don't change. So
When
yeah,
it comes to let's just talk about your average commercial shoot.
yeah.
We won't go into specifics of certain types of commercial shoots, but just your average
Mm.
commercial shoot.
So yeah,
How
so
lo-
for
how long would a client say, if you were to give a figure, what would that figure be? Is like, right, we're going to keep, this is your commercial shoot.
okay, see, with commercial shoots, everything is about specifics. I think when we deal with the licensing side of things, we tell people that they can have pictures for a certain length of time, for a certain length of usage, for a certain length of reach. And that's how we cost up licensing. Now, included within that discussion should be how, where, and until when you keep their photographs, because so that the onus is not necessarily, because keeping every photograph, let's be realistic, it's a pipe dream. It's never going to happen. I'm now starting to archive wedding images from 10 years ago,
mm,
and being forced to kind of look at when was the last time the archive was accessed. you know, kind of which photographs are accessed. What did I provide the client with at the time? That's acceptable with wedding photographs, but with commercial photographs, there's an onus, especially if you're looking at bigger companies like New Balance, for instance. We do photography for them, and the national and governing bodies for swimming in Wales. The onus for them is on us keeping the pictures securely, but also ensuring that they have access 24/7 whenever they want. But there will come a period, you know, when I say to them, right, these are now out of your scope of work that you originally came to us for. Would you like us to keep this for you for a longer period of time? In which case, there's a fee for that.
Yeah.
Would you like to purchase a hard drive with them on? In which case, there's a fee for that. I mean, I know this is going to sound mercenary for perhaps people who are just starting out, but when you're
Well, no, it's important,
it's
because
your
if you are
business,
storing
right?
it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Why should you, if especially if you have a contract saying, well, we're going to hold the images for, let's just say, for example, 3 years.
Yeah.
Let's say you say that, and then you've got them for over, and you're kind of like, well, you're contacting the client. Actually, it's a good courteous thing to do. Look, we've got these images. The contract is up now. Do you want to still keep them? Is essentially what you're asking. Do you still need them? If so, if you want me to keep them, there's going to be a fee, or I can sell you the hard drive or whatever. It's giving them
Yeah.
options, or you don't have to. You know, we'll just delete them, and then that
Yeah.
frees up.
And
And
most,
it's not really mercenary. You know, it's part of the
yeah.
business, isn't it? I mean, I guess people did that with negatives back in the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I mean, I only even bring up that word because I speak to lots of photographers that are just starting out, and they feel scared to ask for money because they're assuming that the client is going to say, why should I have to pay for this? You know, why should I have to pay for that? But I think getting yourself into the right mindset from the start, that storage costs money, you know, your time costs money, your skill, you know, costs money. Ultimately, you know, you might not be asking for a lot of money, but the very fact that there is a fee involved, you know. So, Cam, I guess coming back to your question, look, I keep commercial jobs for a minimum of 3 years. Weddings are kept for a minimum of 7 years, but I do have stuff going back as far as 2008.
Yeah.
I tend to after the sort of 7 years, I'll delete all the images that were not edited and only keep the edited images. The reason, and people say, why do you keep images that weren't edited? An example would be when a bride's grandfather passed away. She came back to me and said, do you have any photographs of my grandfather from the wedding other than what you've already given me? We'll happily pay for them. He's passed away. We want as many photographs as we can. I had about 15 images of him. Some of them were blurry or he was moving, just weren't the right image. Give her all the images, charged a fee for it, you know, just for passing over the images. And ultimately she was incredibly happy that we had those images, which she wouldn't have had if we hadn't kept those. So there is a balance. Only, you know, your listeners can gauge where their business lies. I will say weddings you keep for longer than commercial shoots, and with the shortest time possible being quick shoots, you know, kind of mini sessions and stuff like that. You'd use that to your advantage. So you'd say, when you walk out this door, guys, any photographs you don't purchase will be deleted, so that we've got space on our hard drives, and it's an incentive. People don't want to lose those photographs as well, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you can use it for your advantage.
Yeah. So I think it's a case of you as an individual making, I mean, there's no set rules, but it's you as an individual doing what you feel comfortable doing and what you feel is reasonable. So when it comes to the different backing up options, now that I know that we've all got our own different workflows, with everyone out there that's listening has got all their own different backing up options, and there's probably, you know, there's a myriad of options, some that we've not wouldn't even consider because everyone does things differently. But let's just talk about, let's just say the 3 relevant options. Let's not go into every single one, because I think we've got to because I think what we've got to do is think about what's current, what's current technology, you know, what's the most efficient process. So what would you say? Let's talk about a wedding or your standard commercial shoot. You've just gone out, you've shot a series of images for a client, and you want to keep the original files and you want to keep the edited files. Doesn't matter what type of job it is, okay, but you want to keep everything that you've shot. Where are the 3 best places? What are the 3 best backing up options, would you say?
Well, I would say the first thing is everybody has to have a backup. I know that goes without saying, but you'd be surprised how many people come to me and they're like, well, I have got a backup somewhere. I can't remember the last time it backed up. So the important thing is, if you're not
Good point.
backing up, you're setting yourself up to fail. Okay. The easiest backup is the one that takes the least amount of steps to complete, right? You know, you say, some people will come to me and they say, yeah, definitely backup. What I do is I take all these photographs and then I copy them over to this drive, and then this drive goes into this vault there, and then this gets taken off. And I'm like, whoa. It's too many steps. One click, one button. And it should be as easy to test your backup as it is to complete the backup. Don't assume that everything's going to work perfectly. It's got to be tested as well, right? You know, you test your brakes on your car, you know, you make sure they stop. So why not test your backups, right? I know that's kind of a stupid analogy, but you get my point, you know. So yeah, talking about different types of backup. Okay, so the best one, so this, I should say, talking about different types of backup. Okay, so there is no real best one. You have multiple different types of backup, and each one has their own separate benefits, pros and cons. So on-site, off-site, cloud. Those are the 3 relevant backups. On-site being something you store nearby to you, but on a different drive or in a different place to where your photographs are stored. Off-site is something physically away from where you are working, physically away from your premises, physically away from your computer, maybe in a different house, location. It could even be stored in your shed. I've seen that. I've seen that happen. The last one, cloud-based backup. Cloud is something you would use literally like Dropbox, like Google Drive, you know, Backblaze, CrashPlan, Carbonite. All of these are examples of, you know, cloud-based backup. And that's just another type of off-site backup, but very different in the way it works to off-site. Less hands-on experience, really, you know. More
And I
kind of
guess, yeah, and those 3 options, which make a lot of sense, because what I personally do is I have backups of all the work that I do here at the office, and then I do have a portable drive that I do something that you said is not a good idea. When I've done the shoot, I'll back everything up here at the office on a drive, and then I'll bring a drive that I keep at home, and I'll bring that in, and I'll copy what's on my office drive onto my home drive, and then I'll take that home drive. It's a physical drive, so I just know that it's a physical backup. It's the best way that it's actually done. And then when it comes to cloud, what I do is I only back up finished files, because to be honest with you, the amount of time that it takes to back up, let's just say a whole wedding or any commercial shoot, when we do video, say for example, you know, we did a video shoot last week and we probably had 250 gig of video files, and we can't realistically back up 250 gig worth of files on a cloud system. It would just take too long. So So
Yeah.
we know, so the best answer from what you've said is have physical backups, one at keep that where your office stroke home is. If you don't have a separate office, from where your house is, keep it. You could even give it to a neighbor, or couldn't you? Or you could give it to your parents or your best mate or something. Somewhere you can easily go and just access the file. Leaving it with a neighbor, I think, is quite a good idea.
Yeah.
I know my neighbors really well here at my office, and I could quite easily say to them, look, would you mind if I just left this here, and every time I need it, it's just a physical backup.
Yeah.
The cloud thing, though, is the one thing, though, that is, I think, is really important, because your physical, and I've had this problem, my portable drives in the past, I've had a fair few portable drives that have failed. Okay, and they've been good quality portable drives. Maybe because they've got old, or maybe because I've got one that I've been plugging into 5 different computers and I just can't seem to get it going. Okay, that happens. So backing up onto the cloud is the thing. So you mentioned a number of different cloud places like Dropbox, Blaze, and those sort of, again, just limiting it to, say, 3. And we're not necessarily, I guess, saying that these are the only 3, but which ones would you say would be the first 3 that you should at least have a look at and are the easiest to actually access? Would you say Dropbox probably?
Dropbox is probably, Dropbox is probably going to be the easiest. Google Drive as well. Those are what we would consider non-commercial kind of, solutions. Backblaze, I use myself. They do a number of different plans. There's a Backblaze plan that loads onto your computer that backs up everything that's on your computer as it changes. The one that I use is a business version called B2. And essentially what it does is it allows you to, so it's stored on a network storage device, like a big hard drive that I've got in the office. And that literally drip feeds all the information as it's changed up to the cloud. So there's minimal involvement from me, really, other than setting it up to start off with. Backblaze works really well because it's very transparent. All their pricing is on their website, and you know how much it's going to cost for how much you're going to store. If you want to pay less, you delete the things that you no longer need. If you don't mind how much you pay, it'll give you an accurate guide to how much you're going to pay every month. The reason that I use Backblaze is that it's got an app that comes with it that I can load onto my phone, and I can see at any one time what is backed up in the cloud and download things to my phone or to a computer, or very quickly. Cloud-based backups have been a trend over the years, in that people have said, this is great, but what you have to remember is, if you accidentally delete a whole wedding and you need to restore a whole wedding, you're reliant on how fast your internet is to be able to get that data back. And when you've got a client standing in front of you that says, I need all my pictures now, and you're waiting to download them, if you live in a rural area, that's where the fallibility of cloud-based solutions, that's where they fail. So having multiple solutions solves this problem. But cloud solution is a definite one that I would definitely consider.
Okay. So now my next question, I want to try and keep this answer as simple as possible, because I've come across this and I've still not understood it. Okay, I have to be honest, because I've had one of these systems, and I think now basically what I'm going to ask in a moment is, what is can you explain very, very briefly what is a NAS system and what is a RAID system? Now, I think I've had a NAS system from a company called QNAP, because one of the things that I wanted to comment on, the first thing was what you've just said, was that whether you have a physical backup at home, whether you have a separate one offsite somewhere else, and then when you do cloud, nothing is 100% safe. And I know that. I've experienced this because I've had portable drives that failed, but using a company like QNAP, where I thought everything was perfectly safe, I was hacked, and I've mentioned this on the pod, some time ago. And basically, the hackers are asking me for a few £1,000s and I've lost years of files. because of that. I've not gone back. I've not made that payment. Luckily, I've not had to go back to those files, but I do know that all of I think they go back from probably 2016 to 2020, something like that. Most of them are commercial jobs, and luckily I've not been in the situation where I've had to explain to a customer, look, I've no longer got those files. Leave it a few more months, and I think I'm within that safe period to say, hey, look, after that 3-year period, we wouldn't have kept them anyway, right? 3 or 4 year periods. So now, so I think I had what is a NAS system, and I still don't know what the best thing is, but very, very briefly, so that we don't overcomplicate it, as an introduction, what is a NAS system? And that's NAS. And what is a RAID system? RAID. What do we mean by that? Because they are backup systems, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, computer people love their acronyms, don't they?
RAM
RAM,
NAS and RAID.
WYSIWYG, yeah. What you see is what you get, right?
Yeah.
Let's take NAS to start off with. NAS, first of all, stands for Network Attached Storage, which means that it's like a big hard drive, but instead of plugging it into your computer, you plug it into your broadband or your router, your switch, and that makes the contents of that box available to anything that connects to the Wi-Fi, which can mean you can also connect with certain NAS systems to that whilst you're outside the house as well. So you could be anywhere in the world as long as you have the internet, and you have the internet where your NAS is located. You should be able to access the contents of your NAS. Now, in terms of how a NAS is put together, NAS is just the name of the enclosure, really, and by that it's the box that we physically put hard drives into. They come in all different sizes, from 1, 2, 5, 10, 25 drives. The more drives that you fit into these NAS systems, the more redundancy you have. So for instance, if you've got a 2-disk redundancy and one of the disks breaks, you've got another one as backup. Okay. And it's a simple case of replacing the broken disk, and the good disk should write onto the contents of it over to the new replacement disk. Okay. So that's all a NAS is a bunch of disks, hard drives, physical pieces of hardware put into a box to work together. Now, this is where RAID comes in. So RAID, redundant array of independent disks. Okay. Told you they like their acronyms, right?
Just get together and we got to make it a word. And
that's it.
RAID sounds pretty cool, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, you've also got JBOD, which is actually just a bunch of disks.
Right.
JBOD.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, so you'll see JBOD, you'll see RAID. Okay, so RAID essentially was an idea that manifests itself in 2 ways, either as hardware or software. And now with hardware RAID, the program is written onto a little chip that sits inside the NAS. With software, it's written as part of the software that the NAS uses to arrange things. So if you think of
pros and cons between the chip and the software version, or
hardware almost exclusively tends to be faster and more reliable. Software tends to be cheaper, but less reliable. So, so what does RAID do? Well, it takes all those disks and it takes your files and goes, right, if we put all of those files on one disk and that disk breaks, you've lost all your data. So what we're going to do, this RAID system is very clever, and it spreads your files across the disks. Think of it being like a jigsaw puzzle, okay? So say, for instance, I'm trying to think how to kind of describe this the easiest way. Say, for instance, you take a photograph of Cam there now, Mark, right? And we cut it up into 4 pieces, okay? Yeah. And on the back of that photograph, the physical photograph that we've printed, we write A, B, C, and D, okay? Now we got 4 discs inside our RAID array. Okay, and what we do is we make a copy of that photograph, okay, a couple of times, and on the first disc we put parts A and B. On the second disc we put parts B and C. Third disc goes C and D, and fourth disc goes D and A. Now, considering that the photograph takes 4 parts, A, B, C, D, to make up, if we lost any one of those discs, we can put a new disc in and rebuild that photograph from A, B, C, and D that are on the other disc.
Others, yeah.
I think that's, it sounds complicated, but that's at its bare essentials how a RAID system works. It spreads the contents of your photographs across those discs, allowing the redundancy to, work better, because you've got it spread over multiple discs.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does actually. Yeah. No, it does make sense.
So that's the way it works.
And this might be a stupid question. You might have said this already. But are these two systems, are they separate systems, or are they integrated? Can you use them together, or?
So when you buy a NAS system, they will have certain programs built in. Most will have a RAID system, or will say that they've got a different type of RAID. Some will say they've got JBOD in there. Right. JBOD is basically you put the discs in there and it'll show up as just separate discs.
Yeah.
So when you mount it, it'll show as 2 terabyte discs. Whereas RAID will show as 1 terabyte disc, but it's actually one mirroring another. Now, the other thing that gets confusing, and without going into too much detail, is there's different types of RAID as well. Some are going to be suitable for photographers, some aren't. We can discuss that in a later podcast because I don't want to bore your listeners. But essentially, there's only 2 that photographers are really going to use: is RAID 1 and RAID 5, and that's just down to how the program stores the information across the discs.
Right, but neither one is more reliable than the other. It's just a different way of doing it, would you say? Or
RAID 1 tends to be slightly quicker when rebuilding. If RAID 5 becomes a little bit more easier for accessing your files because you're accessing from multiple disks at the same time. So,
cool.
So
Excellent stuff. Well, Cam, that's loads to think about. I mean, just to put, I mean, I just use hard drives, and I do have 2 hard drives. One's at the studio, one's at home. I just back them up that way. But you're right. There are lots of steps to doing that. Especially when a drive gets over half full, I have to delete it and then put it on. So there's always like, oh my god, I've only got like 1 copy now of all my pictures. So yeah, it's interesting because this, I mean, and I'm sure we'll go into because we, by the way, everybody, we're going to have Peter on a few of these podcasts because we do think this is really important. It's good that you can have that sort of drip feed. It happens all the time. I do have a lot of steps to do with mine. I am quite good at it, but yeah, no, it is really interesting. Cool. All right. I think that's probably it for tech for this episode. But thanks for dropping by, Peter.
Thanks for having me.